Olá, boa tarde e bem-vindos. Vamos começar então esta conferência e conversa com o Steve Paxton, que está aqui ao meu lado. Como já sabem, este é um encontro que faz parte de um ciclo maior que começou na sexta-feira com uma exposição que é algo mais do que uma exposição, porque a experiência que eu estive hoje durante a tarde nas teorias é mesmo uma experiência de habitar aquele lugar com a obra do Steve Paxton. Este é o primeiro, nós começámos na sexta com a inauguração da exposição. Houve já ontem também a apresentação de 3 performances e esta é a primeira de 5 conversas e 5 apresentações em torno da exposição e em torno da obra de Paxton. Eu julgo que a maioria das pessoas que estarão aqui hoje já conhecem pelo menos uma ou outra dimensão da obra de Steve Paxton. Vou fazer uma apresentação muito rápida, porque, mas claro, tenho aqui para falar connosco mais em detalhe. Steve Paxton nasceu nos Estados Unidos na década de 30 e começou, meados da década de 50, a trabalhar com uma série de técnicas que passaram pelo desporto, pelo tai chi, pelo aikido, pelo yoga, e que técnicas essas que o levaram, enfim, que formaram sempre a sua prática na dança. No final da década de 50 trabalhou com José Limão e com Março, de quem foi bailarino. Nos anos 60 fez parte do Theater, um grupo que se juntou em Nova Iorque, de qual foi a partir das explorações em composição do John Cage, a partir de um workshop desenvolvido também por Robert Dunn, que veio também da área da música. E este grupo, Judson Theater, tinha pessoas que se tornaram nomes de referência em diversas áreas artísticas. Talvez ele seja mais conhecido no contexto da dança, mas é fundamental perceber o que aconteceu ali para perceber um pouco do que foi o minimalismo, para perceber também o que foi o trabalho de pessoas como Robert Morris, Ivan Reiner, obras de Caroline Schneemann, que fazendo performance, se apresentou sempre como sendo pintora, Robert Rauschenberg, e eu só refiro estes nomes e estas relações também entre disciplinas, porque temos uma exposição no local e muitas vezes vemos algo que vem mais de práticas que em muitas áreas das artes visuais, das artes plásticas. Portanto, estes cruzamentos estão no âmago e no gênese também do trabalho de Steve Paxton. Na década de 70, fez parte também de um grupo do Grand Unit, um grupo que, para além de explorar, de investigar em torno de práticas de improvisação, apresentou também um extenso, permite-nos pensar muito acerca de questões acerca do viver em conjunto. A partir do final dos anos 70, entramos então no período da construção do Contact Improvisation e do Material for Despair. A obra de Steve Paxton tem exercido uma grande influência na dança contemporânea em geral, a nível internacional. Cá em Portugal, claro, não é exceção, e penso, não posso citar muitas pessoas, porque eu acho que a influência é mesmo muito extensa. Eu conheci o trabalho de Steve Paxton através do trabalho do João Fiereiro, da Vera Mater, da Sofia Nilcar, que através do c.e.m tem desenvolvido também uma relação continuada com a sua obra. Não é a primeira vez que está em Portugal, já em 99 foram apresentados 3 solos no Festival de Danças na cidade, no CCB. Em 2011 houve uma conferência aqui na Culturgest, numa parceria com o c.e.m e com o Fórum Dança. E vou deixar agora a palavra, vou mudar para o inglês. Só para dizer que se alguém tiver alguma dificuldade com o inglês do Steve, ele próprio pediu-me também para indicar isto, eu estou aqui para ajudar a fazer alguma tradução. Steve, thank you very much for being here. I just did a very short introduction to your work. It's really a pleasure to have the opportunity to speak with you and also to have this large time exhibition that will allow us to be in relation with your work for some months. So please, I'll give you the
Well, so here you are, against all obstacles, here you are. How did you do it? When I think of an audience and the man-hours that it takes to prepare to go out and sit in a theater, all the arrangements that it takes, the scheduling, the calendars, the babysitters, the shopping, the clothes alone must take hours and hours. Just give them their weight. There's at least one person in the audience that I've known for probably 45 years who came. There's a woman who had an operation last week, she told me, just before, and she came today. I think we should put the whole cost of the operation in on the man-hours that it takes to get here. Somebody from Porto came. But first, I think we have some formality to get done. And that is to thank. First of all, I think I would like to thank Yuri Conjor, who danced Goldberg Variations last night. It was a memorable performance. At the end, the audience stood up and really told him how they felt about the hour of amazing dancing. It was amazing. I think he really found something in the space last night. No, I can't find what I'm looking for. Where is it? It was right here. But no, it should be in this. It's the same, right?
Yes.
Thank you very much. It's where I wrote the names. Yes. Where did you go? Oh, because it wasn't red. I was expecting it to be red. So I would like to thank Mark Computer, whom I've known for a long time, and thank you very much for this. Delphine Sardo, João Fidel, it's funny, these names. Romain Biget. Is that all the people I should formally thank? Because they were the ones that I heard from in the preparation of this show. This show, I think, is more difficult to produce than it was for me to live the dancing that it portrays, because I had plenty of time to do the dancing, but they've had a short time to put together the show, so the editing is, we commend. And yeah, the condensing. And yet, as I looked through the show, I saw these different chapters of the dancing, and I thought, yes, they've selected moments where a kind of comment arose in the work. Some kind of comment like, well, obviously in Satisfying Lover, the walking dance, that the ordinary human body is an amazing thing, and in my feelings for it, in my growing understanding as a young dancer, just the fact of walking. When I settled upon walking as an artistic formula or medium or something, I was looking for something ancient in the body. I was looking for something not of the culture, but before the culture, before, back to times that we can only imagine. And I think walking was a good choice. And it's an obvious thing, we see it all the time, we do it all the time. But maybe we don't concentrate on it all the time. So to put it on the stage is what our culture does. It's like a microscope on walking, on the people who are walking, on the fact of walking, standing and sitting, just as one strata of what the body does. And I'm sure you all know to be bipedal, to do walking standing up like this is not the most normal way of moving on the earth and relating to gravity. And it both gives us the potential of using the arms in various ways, but always, when you're walking, actually it's the arm and the leg are both working in gravity, one touching but not, and the other swinging. But it's unusual. And then that allows us to be upright, which allows the head to be at the top of the body, which means that there's, about 7 pounds of mass up there that has to do with how the body works. That is to say that this position makes me go So, but we're doing it all the time, playing with that point of balance around which we're switching sides, head to torso, changing weight fall through the body, playing with all the potential, holding back with the weight of the pelvis, so that the head, all this weight, this is mostly air up here, light bones, the head, not much weight, But the head is at the top of the neck, so the neck and the torso, two different centers, torso and the pelvis, two different centers. Suddenly we're in Bali, suddenly we're in Java. That's what they dance. But it's not what we dance, and it's not. Our dance seems to have, in the classical tradition, got a very different route. I wanted to speak today to young dancers, if they came, if they're in, just to say, first of all, the route to becoming a dancer is a long one. And this is because you have to grow the information. It isn't getting information. You don't have a 4-year course. You sort of have a 10-year course in which you have to change your body. You have to actually develop. You have to actually grow, direct your own growth and be directed by your teachers into a different body. And the reason for this is the dance that we works with projection or extension or stretch or maybe pointing, but the extremes of the geometry of the body. And I don't know why we've done that, except that for a theater like this, I can make intimate gestures here, but maybe it doesn't carry to the top row. So if I make big gestures, maybe we all have a chance to see more or less what's going on. Maybe that's the case. Maybe as theaters became bigger, the dance became grander. But we have invented something that I don't think any other culture has. I've not seen any dance that uses this principle so deliberately and so in such a full way. It's quite an invention. So what does it mean to have an invention in movement, in human growth, in development of how we, what we become? I don't know if I can answer that question. I've proposed it. What does it mean? But what I think it is a maybe some statement of our aspiration, some statement of our reach, our sense of, especially you stand on a mountain and you do this, you're kind of gathering the energy and projecting all the energy out. And it's a very big feeling, maybe you'd get the same feeling if you did this. But a certain kind of geometry, and I think we see in the ballet, I think we see the superhuman ability that ballet dancers develop. Well, it's our legacy, and it's our gift to the rest of the world as we accept their dance, into our bodies. They get our, it's a good exchange. So each culture then invents its art, and we don't know exactly the rules behind that. We know what we've done, we know what we've done. I mean, we can see it, and also the modern dance coming in a way to counter the power of the ballet. At least that was the story I was told. I don't think it's really true. I think the modern dance was as dependent on ballet as Lisbon is on ancient Greece. You know, just could not happen. The prior thing is important, the basic, you know, the formality of something that we've preserved. And yet, with the modern dance came a new idea that it didn't have to be a universal dance, that it could be a personal dance. There could be the dance auteur. There could be a new technique. This is very tricky because I think ballet is right on the edge of both creating an extraordinary body and tearing bodies apart. You know, it's got really extreme in terms of, and ballet dancers generally aren't still, in general, their career is short. Like all extreme athletes, you know, it can't be just said of ballet. It's true of anything where there are extraordinary forces involved and the body deals with them. For the modern dancers, they lasted quite a long time, which means that their technical means were safe, or relatively safe. I danced with Cunningham. I never had an injury. I think he was very careful in his choreography and in his classes to stay within the base that he had created in his dancers. So their strength allowed him more freedoms. So if he made them stronger and more flexible, he had more ways to express the body. A good bargain, you know. We were growing stronger and he was using us in more complex ways. After I left the company, I know he got into choreographing by computer, in which case the computer, you know, could make a body design do almost anything. And his dancers found ways to do what the computer suggested. Things that he wasn't sure they could accomplish were put into dances. So, and as far as I know, yeah, I think some of his dancers had, you know, hip operations and things like that, but not as many as ballet dancers. And I think I would like those statistics to be public someday. Just, you know, which techniques and how many spine operations, how many knee operations per technical invention. At any rate, when it came to my generation, the modern dancers were already mature. Março Cunningham, who I was dancing with, was still in his 40s, but the others were in their 50s and 60s, in the generation just before him. So there's a sort of maxing out, a sort of place where they flowered, as it were, and now the flowers are getting a little, it happens in life, you know, a little drier, the color is fading a little. Maybe not all careers, but mostly it happens that way. So when I came along, that was this moment of recession a little bit, of climax and then release. And I assess the situation this way. My teacher did not do what he was taught. My teacher found a new thing to do. His teacher, Martha Graham, did not do what she was taught. She invented a new way to do it. Her teacher, what's their names? St. Denis, Ruth St. Denis, and Ted Shawn, thank you, did not do what their teacher, Isadora, or their exemplar, their idol, had done. And Isadora didn't do what anybody had done. This is a very interesting sequence, and it happened in the modern arts. It happens in all the modern arts. It means that there's a lot of responsibility on partly trained, immature, aspiring, hopeful artists to invent something new as they are developing, as they're still being developed by their teachers. In a way, their resistance has to grow so that they don't just become a copy of what they're taught. This responsibility is that they become, they're like the phoenix, coming out of the ashes of the previous art form. But it can't be the same phoenix. It isn't just a phoenix again. It's something, a new bird has to come. So that's weird. That's the situation we're in. And so I don't encourage anyone to become a dancer, because this is going to be a hard time. But if you do, just know that it's going to take you a long time to mature, and you have to be patient with yourself. And you're going to have to go to those classes. You don't have to like a class. You don't have to do anything other than do the class and do it regularly to get your body strong. And that will be a basis for your health for the rest of your life. So why not? Why everybody should be dancing, on the basis of that. It is, if you don't do it to extreme, it's fantastic for your body. It's fantastic for your health. Just your bones, your meat, your lungs, your heart. Great stuff. But if you want to then use it for art, you have to find something. Now, is there always something there to find? Is this a fool's errand? Have we found it all and we won't find much new dance in the future? Have we seen everything? Doesn't it feel like that? Oh man, there's so much of it, and there's so many people, and they're all different. And okay, we get it, Well, where I live on a farm. I live in a kitchen, basically, with a window facing south, onto a gentle hill with a tree. In the spring, grass grows there. The tree has blossoms. In the winter, it is snow, very far north in Vermont. The tree is bare. There are trees in the background, naked, cold trees. And I look out every day and I feel something. After, I've been there for 50 years, looking out this window, more or less. I feel something, and what I feel is the molecules of that hillside. After all this time, my vision, not my actual eyes, but my vision is saying, this place is alive. Every bit of it is alive. The dirt is alive. The plants are alive. Every molecule is transforming into something else. They get to a certain point, they start to decay, they transform to something else. They come up again. The cycle is happening. It's molecular. I'm seeing it on a molecular level. These molecules are not set in stone. These molecules are adapting and changing. So it's like 1 trillion changes are happening at any one time in my yard. And they're not all happening in the same way that they happened. The changes are happening, they're adapting a little bit into something else, Talking about evolution in a way. I'm talking about evolution in miniature, micro miniature. I'm talking about our atoms, our molecules changing. We know they do. We know we've changed. Even though you feel the same, I feel the same as me, as you feel as you, you know you've changed. You're not who you used to be. Nor will you stay who you are now. This is so scary. What am I about to say next? I don't know. Anyway, what I have said so far suggests that you have some ability to guide what you become as you change. The change is going to happen, you have a choice. If you want to be a dancer, there are choices, pretty obvious. Do the classes. I suggest you do the classes. I know one dancer who didn't do the classes. And she is such a genius that actually she's part genius and part on the autistic spectrum. Simone Forti, she's Simone, I used to see in Cunningham class, she was trying to do the classes. And after the classes, I would see her on her hands and knees crawling in the studio. And I knew that the class had just been too much to comprehend. And she just needed one more, just something simple and straightforward and basic to ground herself again. And she said, the teacher comes up and he says, raise your left hand. And everybody raises their left hand. But he's raised his right hand. And so she thought he should say, raise your left hand. If he was going to demonstrate, he should do this and you should do that. So this was already a point of problem for her. And then she looked in a mirror. She looked in a mirror. Now, this is a problem I've heard they put to new students at MIT when they come in. Can you solve this? can you just, make an explanation for this? But if you look in a mirror, the mirror does the same thing. You raise your right hand, it raises its left hand. It's you. And Simone noticed, she had a pretty good grasp on the problem. She said, it reverses right to left, but it doesn't reverse up to down. Anyway, this meant that the dance class scenario, the studio scenario, was difficult for her. And she went on to develop her own work, which started with very basic work and ended up at a place that I would consider shamanistic. But she was unrelenting. Now she's somebody who tasted the dance techniques, but was not adapted or was not compliant enough, was too stubborn, maybe, I don't know. She's now in her 80s, she's still performing. I think she's been injury-free. So that means she has not hurt herself working on her body, with her body. It's altogether a weird idea to take a body, as a matter of fact, to take a body and turn it into an art thing. It's one thing to make art of bodies, of people fighting or lovers, trysting, or, it's one thing to make a painting of it or a sculpture of it or to make art of it, but to do it with it, as theater does, as music does, as dance does. And dance is particularly strange because movement is so hard to understand. It's so hard to describe, and I think that's one reason that in the dance techniques they all make a simplification of human movement. So when you study a dance technique, you're not studying movement, you're studying really a small area of what movement can be. And if you were then to study martial arts, you would have a different slice of the human movement. And Tai Chi, a different slice of human movement. Or ethnic dance. What I saw in Bali absolutely blew me away. Such a beautiful, complete exploration of movement types that I didn't know, done in glorious compositions. Nothing of my dance was there to be seen. So, is there more? I think there's more. I think more is evolving. I think we are evolving. I think you have to evolve. There's all kinds of evolution. There's what you do in your life by yourself as a solo evolver. That's your work. There's you and your friends, a group of you, what you think, how you think, what you agree on, how you present work maybe. Maybe you're a dance group or something. The larger culture, gradually moving out to whatever is represented by this room, which I assume to be a very wide spectrum of the culture. Yeah, we're all evolving. I think it's time for a video. I'm going to show first Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So, can you please show, podem mostrar o primeiro vídeo? Smiling.
Smiling. A dance I made to think about and comment on facial expressions in contemporary culture.
Podem baixar as luzes.
He's cutting, there are two dancers, we're both smiling. He's cutting, the photographer cut to the audience for no reason that I can see. Okay, this is a different piece. Let's stop there. That state, a dance where people stood still. Satisfying Lover, which you saw last night. A dance where people walk, stand, and sit. I wanted to see what these look like on stage. I wanted to see these performed. I wanted to see standing performed, not just to happen. I wanted to see it performed to to honor it in a way, to say yes, this. But also to see what happened to the people doing it. The people walking across the stage last night, not performers. You know, people may be nervous of the audience. Do you know what a power you are? You know that there's something very powerful in all these eyes converging on a spot. Do you feel it? And for me, as a young dancer, I still remember the pain of the stage fright. I'm trying to do the dance that I had to do in spite of this paralysis of flight or fright. You know, what to do, you know, what that the situation causes. It's a powerful situation. So, to walk across naturally, that's what they're supposed to do. Natural, in this circumstance, is not easily done. Natural in this circumstance means, I mean, for me, I think it's pretty easy because I accept that we're all people in the room. And, you know, that's what we are. But if I think of you as the audience, ooh, it's like the troops are coming, you know. It's like I'm sure many of you know this feeling. There are people who take classes in public speaking so that they will learn to cope with the fear of public speaking. So they can stand up in front of an audience and talk to people who are just like them. But because of the magnification, because of the situation, let's have the next video.
Próximo vídeo, o esqueleto. Animação com o esqueleto.
People smiling. So, this is the movement of a person taken by computer measurement, standing, and then that movement put onto a fake skeleton and shown from below. This is what we all look like from below. It is. The pelvis is, do you see it moving?
It's not swinging.
Well, the person is standing. So when you're standing, you know, there isn't this kind of movement. It isn't to demonstrate, you know, how the joints work. It's to look at the microscopic movement of standing. What they talk about in the exhibition is the small dance. So you're looking up the center of the person. You're looking up the spine. You can see the spine beyond the pelvis there. And up into the center. And you're looking at the center adjusting. To stop the weights from collapsing and a fall from happening. In other words, standing, waiting, looking. Am I in anybody's way? Should I? Oh, I know. I think that's the back of the head. Shape of the back. I think it's probably distorted. I am very interested Could we do this again? I'm very interested in this point, this point, this point. Because, okay, that's good, I think. Because they're below the center of mass. So the center of mass is the point around which your body would rotate if you were in space. Here on Earth, it's the point where most of your mass is located, so that the movement of the pelvis and the contents of the pelvis, you know, the bladder, the guts, I mean, a watery part of the digestive system. So water is heavy, has mass. Gives you a basis for one thing, the thing that actually has to move forward for the whole body to be moving forward is here. In other words, you can't leave it behind and get anywhere. And the thing that gives you a basis for moving the top of the body from, right? So you can use this mass, because this mass is less, even with the leverage, you have some freedom. You have a larger sphere of movement reach. So that's those points, the points that you are currently sitting on. So we have a common reference here. You can feel each one. You can feel the bone kind of pushing through the muscle. And the coccyx. The coccyx can move like this. So you can get voluntary control of its movement as a very small tail. So the ability to guide the pelvis into a movement like this, or into a movement like this, which are extremes of movement. We don't usually, but anyway, it's guided by that bone. So these bones guide the weight and also the attitude of the pelvis, which is what our torso posture is based on. I've written a little book called Gravity. The reason gravity is important to me as a thought form is because it's what keeps the body true. And by true, I mean like a carpenter thinks of true. I mean the fall of a weight on a string, a line, and a weight, that line will be straight. So the fall of our weight in the body has the same effect. The fall of the organs into the pelvis helps give us a basis. We can unnecessarily pull those, with tension, pull those organs back up and hold the weight too high. Can you see a kind of paralysis? Instead of the practice of allowing the weight down the back, huge muscles in the back, a lot of weight, shoulder blades connecting down all the way into the buttocks, again a lot of weight. The ability to bend over, depending on not pulling yourself forward and falling. So the ability to resist the reach is as important as the reach. In other words, I'm reaching in two directions. For every reach, there's something else that's helping that reach not just pull me off balance. Can you see the counter reach? Every reach has a it goes in two directions. It's what gives us, it's as though our freedom were contingent or based on its opposite. Evolution takes a long time. It happens in small elements. A friend has sent me a video I want to show you. I don't know what this video means. I think they're small. Yes, wouldn't it be incredible if it was this big? There's something else about that face. It is so much like, I used to live in Arizona. There are Indians there who use masks in their ceremonies. This face has elements of that, maybe elements of African things too, but also certainly our cartoon television world is a reference to this. But how did a spider make that face? How did a spider, what is that face signaling to? As Romain said earlier today, what is the significance of this face? I see it as a face. Does anybody here not see a face? I mean, it has a nose and it has eyeballs and, oh my God. A spider has evolved this relative to something else in the environment, and I just, I've only just found this spider, so this is the beginning of a research, but anyway, for young dancers. Despair not. We modestly say we have only begun to understand. We may not have even begun yet. We may still be before the beginning of some real understanding. There's lots of chaos and evolution that we have yet to find. And if that spider can exist, somebody in this room or somebody in this city has such a potential development that they could bring to show us on this stage. I think that's all I have to say. Thank you for coming. Oh, there's possible questions. Questions about spiders will be taken by my colleague. Spider specialist. Yeah. How long was that?
You want me to try me there?
Yeah, how long was that?
1 hour.
1 hour.
Yes. Good.
You're lucky.
We have now some time for discussion, for a conversation, half an hour conversation, more or less. I would like to open the stage to everyone. I have some questions. I don't know if I can start, perhaps.
Sure,
Something, because
sure.
you ended now saying that to the young dancers, despair not. Nevertheless, when we see our exhibition, there are 2 videos where you are speaking about Vermont and also about composting as ways of cultivating your pessimism.
Cultivating my pessimism.
Yes, you said that, and that's
Not fair to pick up on what I said before and bring it up now. I thought I was an optimist. I don't know, does anybody else grapple with this problem? Do you wonder if you're an optimist or a pessimist? Yeah, I mean, it is a question. Maybe it's not so important, but I was curious, could I solve it? I thought I was an optimist for many years. I met a man in Amsterdam in an interview situation, and he asked me a question that I just thought was so stupid. That he said something about, don't you think things are getting better? And at that point I was much younger than I am now, but I was already old enough to know that I don't think things are getting better. And I don't know what to do about it. And so I said to him, no, I don't. I said, what about the police? What about nurses? What about education? Where have you been? And, have you been under a rock all your life? I was, in a way, trying to convince him to stop being such an optimist and become a pessimist. But I realized at that moment that I was very pessimistic at heart. This was saddening for me, depressing. I like to think of things improving and getting, you know. And I thought, well, that doesn't seem to have worked. Being an optimist does not seem to have improved anything, including in my own life that I can see. I'm told that it's a good thing, but who knows? So maybe I'll try being a pessimist and see if that works, you know, or see what its, you know, conditions are. And so I've been living under those conditions now for some time. It's a bitter victory. It's somehow maybe a little bit healthier to hope that things will improve than it is to have the bitter confirmation that you were right and they will not improve. But I try to be realistic, and I don't see, well, anyway, I'm waiting for this next turn. If I changed once from optimist to pessimist, I'm sure I can change again if I actually find evidence that something is improving. So, stay tuned. Wait a minute.
It's very simple. You also said that this thing of being with the compost and generating earth, you know, like this connection, because I think that is very optimistic, not in the sense of what will become or whatever. In the moment of the connection, something opens, and that's nice.
Are you an optimist?
I think I am an optimist, but I don't listen to optimism as something that would translate into things are going to get better.
Really?
Yeah.
What other interpretation?
It's something closer to the moment, something closer to the diversity of the events.
A neutralist. You're a neutralist.
I'm enthusiastic.
So, more questions, comments? Perhaps here, and then there is another guy.
Well, I have always been an optimist, but you can have an optimistic day and a pessimistic day. So one day you wake up, you're a pessimist, and but the next day you're an optimist again. That's what I believe in. And I admire you, Steve, because you look around 61 or 62 years old. How do you do that?
Pessimism is enhancing.
Não sei qual foi. Pode ser aqui, assim, porque eu acho que aquela mão a seguir primeiro, e depois a seguirei.
Thank you so much for your all words. I'm just getting curious about this ancient. You're looking for something ancient in the movement. Out of that part, development in that ancient thing. What is?
What is?
It's ancient.
Yes. That, but what is? Well, that was my question, and I think I've demonstrated some of the answers that I found. What is ancient is walking. What is maybe even more ancient is the physics of walking. What is maybe as ancient as being a unique body of any kind, you know, round or with limbs or with 4 legs, is weight falling through that body. In other words, the separation of something from the earth separating from itself, becoming a species, and then the connection of that mother and that child through gravity. I think that's ancient. Yeah, when I talk about gravity, I'm not, I'm talking about something that I can barely conceive of as a force in which I'm on the most microscopic level constantly in touch with. It is like if I talked before about the pelvis being a necessary counterbalance for the reach, here I'm talking about the attraction between this body and the earth, that being the necessary conditions for the movement and for the life. Certainly the movement life. So, we can move in space. It's possible to move in space. It's very much more complicated for us. We are trained to move in a gravity field. Our whole species, can you imagine, up until this generation, our whole species had only the shortest, example of what it meant to not be controlled by or operating with or dancing in or playing with gravity. Only the shortest, the time it takes to fall out of a tree, the time it takes to fall off a cliff or a building, those were periods of freedom. The research has yet to come back. We haven't finished the studies yet, because the people who had that freedom, it didn't end well. But now we do. Now we have people who are in space, out of gravity, and we see what happens to them, and we see that their whole systems change. Their circulation change, and their bones start losing density, and their brains change, and their senses change. Everything changes. There's a kind of condition that our species has always had. So that's ancient. That's ancient, and I'm looking for more things like that. I like the senses a lot. I think the development of seeing, of hearing, of the development of looking at animals which don't see as we do, looking at animals who have better hearing than we do, or better smelling, seeing what the potential is, seeing the range of our own senses, trying to understand our own scope for sensing the environment. This seems to be as much as we need, but there's much more available of information that we don't receive or compute or are not conscious of. A lot of it is being conscious of it. Like, if you're not told about gravity, would you notice it? If it took Newton, one of the great scientists of the world, to explain this force to us, if it took that long in the development of the human race before at least what our culture has a trace of explanation for this force that we live in all the time, I think it's quite possible you would never know. You would never notice that this was something to be thought about. I think it's something, we can't leave it to the architects, you know, to think about this. This also affects living things. This affects us in our every movement and our postures. My God, our postures. You know, the way we, as architects of ourselves, stack ourselves in this force. I've heard, I was raised to think that what I'm doing now was a good posture. Do you agree? No. Lately, they're saying this is better. Who would have thought that science would take us down this road?
Thank you. It's very beautiful to listen to you and very inspiring to watch you. So I'd like to ask you if you could improvise a bit. I will give you some keywords, and I would like if you can improvise around those keywords. And these keywords, I'd like to listen to you about Daniel Stern, affect, attunement, baby's movement, voice, musicality.
Are these the key words?
Yes.
Start again.
Okay. Daniel Stern.
What's that?
Dan Stern. S-T-E-R-N. I've read some papers.
Daniel Stern.
Yes.
Such a surprise to hear this coming from an audience person. Daniel Stern was a young, when I met him, psychologist working at Columbia, getting a degree or something, doing some work. The work he was doing was super cinema on mothers and babies. So super cinema is a word I'm using for very fast cameras, shooting movement at a speed which is too fast for the human eye. So this is again this question of what is our scope, you know, our normal scope. With our cameras, we can, as we know, see things happen that we could not, are too fast for us to be able to see. What he found in this material was that there is a dance between a mother and a baby which is too fast to see. And I mean, there's obviously things that you can see, you know, it's like you can see the normal spectrum, but we can't see very far into the infrared, I mean the ultraviolet or the infrared. We can't see very far into the overall spectrum of energies. Same with movement. So what he found had big implications. I guess you could say that it starts in the womb, it starts the development of the fetus, you know, the growth of this being inside this moving creature. You know, it's inside the womb and it's inside the fluid, but at the same time it's aware of the movement. The movement sometimes is rhythmic, sometimes working, sometimes resting, different facings, you know, all of this. And of course, the fetus itself can move within the fluid. So there's a relationship developing, and then the child gets born. And suddenly it has to cope with gravity, but it's still within the limbs of the embrace of the mother. Let's say the embrace. That's such a nice word. And this intimacy of being continues. And it is on, it's at a speed that is, it's a touchstone, something I've been wanting to know all my life. What is the speed of being? How fast do we be? Do you want to translate that? Is that...
Quão rápido podemos ser?
How fast are we? And it seems like we are faster than we can consciously feel. If the evidence of the mother and the baby relationship is faster than we can sense. So that seems about right. I mean, I would speculate if I were going to say that my speed of being is faster than I can think or notice, because it seems to be there supporting me at every moment that I notice it. Here I am, here I am, here I am, here I am. I'm always there. So I assume that it's going, you know, really microscopic rate, and my thinking or noticing is coming in bigger, slower units, you know, to always find the embrace of my support systems of being. Daniel Stern. And I last saw him in Switzerland. I found him after many, many, many years of looking for him. And he had had a heart operation, and he had under his skin on his shoulder was a box. You know, his heart, prompter, what do you call it? Pacemaker. And he was still strong and still very bright. I lived with him for a couple of weeks in the basement, saw him sometimes, well, almost every day, and we had some time together. And I was trying to get the nerve to say, I want to see those films again, you know, that you did at the beginning of your career in the early 70s. I need them. I want to show them to people. I want to prove, you know, that contact improvisation has, you know, I want to supply the evidence that contact improvisation has a physiological beginning, and that it's much more well, it's much more microscopic. It's much more sensitive. It's much more delicate. It's much more. It's finer than the way we're dancing it as we, you know, go bumping into each other and leaning, and you know, and that feels intimate. What the mother and the baby are doing is far more refined, however. You know, it's silk as opposed to sackcloth, and that's something I want to tell people, that there is this texture, far more refined texture to the dance available, or you know, a goal that one can go for in terms of sensing what another person is doing. And anyway, but I mentioned it casually to him, and we were passing the university in Geneva where he was working, and he said, "Oh, it's in there somewhere, it's in the archives," and you know, and then he became sick. After that visit, he became sick, and then within a year he had died. And his wife, whom you would think would be somebody who would be was perfectly aware of his records and all of that. She is a driven woman. She barely had time. She made time to, host me in her house. What she does is teach young parents about their child. So she likes to work with babies in the days after birth. She's teaching mothers who have no idea how to deal with a baby, what a baby is. She shows them the reflexes of the baby, she handles the baby, she introduces a woman to her baby. I mean, she and Daniel were doing two sides of the same thing. He was doing the scientific and observation side. She is doing the nurturing and healing. If a birth is unwanted, if a mother has had a traumatic pregnancy or a traumatic beginning of the pregnancy, if the mother becomes depressed after the birth, whatever, this woman is there dealing with that, and she is doing it as much as she can, as much as her life allows her to heal. So I've never dared ask her to stop what she's doing to go get these stones. It would be inhumane. Anyway, Daniel Stern, quite a story. He was great. I talked to a friend this morning, and some of Daniel Stern's work, he talked about these moments, and my friend called them Stern moments. Apparently, is that right? What people are calling them? Is it more than just you? I call them Stern moments. Anyway, Stern moments. He wrote a book in which he said, he was a psychotherapist as well, and he said in a therapy session there will be a few seconds in which a shift is possible. So it isn't, like the image I got from Freudian analysis was that it's kind of a logical talking through the problems of the life, and the characteristics and the traumas and and things are kind of rationally figured out. Stern said there might just be a few seconds in which both the therapist and the patient can shift together and see things from a different perspective, and that's a shift in which the actual foundation of the patient is allowed a little pivot or flexibility, and that gradually these accumulate and something can happen with a psyche in torment or whatever. And I like this image too, because it means we can stay alert for these moments in our lives in which something can change, something can pivot. But that we don't have to just wait all the time. We don't have to just, expect it to happen all the time, or work, push it too much to happen. These are really grace moments that occur sometimes, and you take them when they happen.
Thank you. Hi, Steve. I'm over here on the right.
Hello.
Steve, just very quickly, you spent a lot of time in your life building and devising very complex systems to improvise, and sometimes what I find mysterious systems to improvise. I don't know, I'm thinking of a work you did with Lisa. You and Lisa did a work where you were on stage with several objects on a table, and you kind of exchange objects between you two. And I would just love it if you could talk a little bit about why is it important for you to improvise and to create conditions, complicated conditions sometimes, let's say, like that, to improvise. And I'm not even thinking about Contact Improv. I'm thinking of these systems you, either alone or with Lisa or with other people, that you build in order to do something that you don't know at first what's it going to be.
Okay, so Vera, let me just tell you, this whole talk, I think it's pretty clear, has been an improvisation. I worried about it. I was a little bit, impressed with the fact that it was going to happen, and I should get ready and prepare properly to meet people who have come to seriously listen. But I'm not capable of that anymore. It isn't that I don't care. I hope I've delivered something of substance, but I feel like what's the stern moment then, what I can do, what you can do, what we can do together is something that is more a grace in the room than anything I'm going to just deliver. So this question of improvisation, I think if you start to improvise, if you say to yourself, as I did, I would like to know what improvisation is, you have automatically set yourself back about a year of finding out the answer to your question. And it's, of course, it's not possible to not ask this question, what is improvisation? And the minute you do that, it's like you are looking forward, but what is improvisation? It's like that. In fact, what you need to do is look to your life and little moments when maybe you can observe yourself without noticing that you are. Do you sometimes have a moment like that? Maybe a little stern moment, self-reflection. And notice that you're improvising all the time. You just are. You can't stop, and it's part of everything. You don't have enough consciousness power to manufacture all the events that you create. A lot of it is unconscious, which I think is a much more powerful part of the brain, just my idea. Much more powerful than consciousness. Consciousness being like the finger, here, thinking, what is this glass? What is this water? Interesting. Consciousness. Meanwhile, all of this, the rest of me is the unconscious, making the conditions for this moment to happen, and let this finger have its way, with what it's interested in. That's sort of, we have, anyway, I'm sure the brain has many chambers, so I don't think it's just the two, but, and every sense has many complications. I mean, vision seems almost impossible. It just seems impossible that we're able to see, considering how processed that sense is as it goes into the body. So improvisation. How do you do something that you don't know what you're about to do? So I think we should eliminate any idea of freedom from this discussion. There is no such thing as freedom. There are always conditions. You may disagree. I am I'm a pessimist, however. If you can prove to me that I'm wrong, I would appreciate it. So if there's no such thing as freedom, and we're only dealing with conditions, and we're dealing with conditions in ways that we're not consciously dictating, which we are actually doing all the time. You know, we're actually always coping with situations reflexively or unthinkingly or exploring. You know, in which case we're a little bit more actively engaged, but we haven't decided what to do. We haven't decided, I haven't decided yet what I'm going to do. As I begin to do it, at some point I'm going to make a choice. How did I get here? That's short enough that we can examine it. If it gets much longer, if you get into a Yuri Konar dance like last night, it starts off and you can track it for a while, and then you get lost in the complexity of what he's doing, and it just goes on, and you end up with something that is mountains of detail that you have somehow absorbed. How many people saw the dance last night? So a lot. So for those of you who didn't, I'll just say that it was incredibly articulate and intricate. The body was coming apart and going together in so many different ways, so fast sometimes that you could not track. You could not see where the movement was going to emerge next, what direction he was going to go into. Just very fast, very sometimes slow, sometimes. Anyway, a complexity. So that was an hour. I have a friend, Lisa Nelson. She recently did a performance in which the formula for the performance was one person makes a proposal and then says when the proposal stops. The other person makes a proposal, it says when it stops. So it would be like, and the other person would make a proposal. And the other person makes a proposal, you know, back and forth. Okay, so it's 3 people ultimately doing this. They made maybe 150 proposals in an hour. In that time, the whole stage was transformed. I mean, literally transformed. The tables were upside down, the chairs were moved, the dancers had been everywhere on the stage. Just going through this little formula, it gradually got to be an accumulation of detail, like evolution, leading to something like that spider. An accumulation of details that just transformed the situation. I came out of there high as a kite and literally felt like I had taken a mushroom. Literally. My thought process was recognizably hallucinating from a performance. I felt a little bit like that last night as well. The accumulation of detail, following detail that far, you know, trying to keep track of how it transpired from moment to moment to moment, and you're trying to keep hold of this moment, which was so beautiful, and it kept changing, and it kept going, and here's another moment which is notable. And what happened in between? Well, it's too complex to remember exactly, and you're straining to recover a reality that you've just lived through. And it's quite a stage, quite an interesting place. A place of ambiguity and lack of anchoring and and a sense. I mean, we all know that music, so we know Jesus, he's only halfway through, and we still have to go through another half of this complexity, this lace work of movement, the stage just filled with his image, forward and back, and upside down. So what makes it interesting is that, at least for me, I cared. He made me care to keep watching. And if you didn't care, then it would just be overall design and pattern. It wouldn't be so interesting. I wanted to follow him as intricately as possible. I danced that dance. I know that dance. Not that dance. We can have a discussion here. That was his dance. But he knows my dance. So somehow it's our dance to a degree. Anyway, I like the way he does that dance. Especially I liked it last night. And how did he do it? Well, we have been talking for 4 or 5 years now about how is he supposed to relate to the fact that he is doing a dance I did, but he's doing his dance. The question of authorship of this dance is now, it has lost all rationality. It can be said, I suppose, that it's our dance. There's another guy who lives in Paris, he's doing a version of it. I don't know if he and Yuri know each other. I think we do. I don't think it's their dance together, but I think through me, it's our dance. It's such an interesting question. How does one decide? But I think it's something about play. You know how it is when you decide, oh yeah, let's just take the day off and go to the beach, or let's go down to the park and, run in the grass or whatever to play. I think it's something about play. I think that's a decision that we can take, and I don't think it's a big art decision. But I think if you go into a studio and you play, and if you are at least serious enough to track what you're doing, and if you want to improvise, then you have to say, okay, but I have to be aware that everything is evolving. Evolving is very useful there. And also the idea of spectrum is very useful. So that you're not thinking in terms of set and improvised, but in terms of Bach was supposed to be a great improviser, but he was improvising counterpoint, which is a form, which we consider a form, a set form, or a form that can be set. Set meaning stopped. Set meaning undeveloped beyond this moment of setness, which is not how life seems to work, but it seems to be how culture works. Culture is past viewing. What else can that be made of? You can't get 1 million people to agree on the future, but you can get most of them to agree on a certain version of the past, and that becomes the culture. And the artists of that culture are the artists that are remembered, and stuff like this museum show of my work is produced. It's the culture looking at itself and deciding, pro con, what are the merits of something. Euro, Guga, Picasso. But I think I saw Picasso improvise. I think there's a video of him painting on glass, and you see him just doing his thing. It's his thing. It's a conditional thing, but he didn't. There wasn't any clear plan there. So I think it's something you could train yourself to do and look for the conditions with which you want to do it. Do you want to do this improvisation? I'm actually enjoying this. Or is it going to swallow the stage? Or is it, And then do recognize that there are some things that planning and order and sequencing are better than improvisation for achieving what you want. Don't improvise your taxes. Is it that?
I think we only have time for one more question, so
Hi Steve, I'm not really a dancer. I need to be a dancer in terms of potential, but I don't have a dancing background established. I think I'm a musician, but I don't know. And maybe you're the right person for me to ask this question, because sometimes different people might bring different perspectives on something and might actually produce a different kind of answer. And someone as experienced as you in dance might actually help me out with this, which is there a difference between movement and dance? Because, for instance, the performance of the people walking on stage, normal people would look at that as just people walking on stage. Of course, it's performed, and so it's a performance. And there's the traditional way certain cultures show their dances, traditional dancing and all that. But you've mentioned the word dance in for instance, that skeleton movement. And can you please elaborate on this or try to? Because, well, for me, not having any information or being really green in this, I would like to see the parallel between a very experienced person and someone who's not really a dancer.
Well, I can see this. I'm perfectly willing to eliminate the word dance from the language if it would help clarify matters. I don't think we can do without the word movement, but I think we can get along without the word dance. How the word dance is useful is when people are trying to express the state or the change of state that, let's say, 10 years of study produce in a body, and the focus on a certain aesthetic produces, and or if it's, I'm thinking now about ballet, that these dancers I saw that were so spectacular were young teenagers. Now maybe they had been dancing all their lives, I don't know, but at any rate, there's a change of state arrived at by trance. But at any rate, it was not the pedestrian state. What I think we saw in these people walking across the stage yesterday, clearly some of them were really uncomfortable in their bodies doing it. You know, I saw people walking like, and they were told to do normal walking. You know, it was like they had never really felt the mechanism before, and suddenly they were responsible for producing it, and that's part of the piece, really, you know, the performance of the ordinary, a really paradoxical proposition. And yet, is it a dance? Only maybe in my mind. I call it a dance. Because of the perspective that I have, the perspective that I have. And if that's a perspective that other people don't have, then I'm willing to not fight about it, you know. All I want to do is extend the interest into, I know that the brain has priorities, and I know that our casual movement is not one of the high priorities. And walking, especially if you're walking and thinking about, you know, what's on your list and what you've got to get done and when you've got to get there and who you just saw and who you're about to meet and all of that, that the actual mechanism of getting there is not going to be a high priority. And I noticed that. I noticed that it was a low priority, and I wondered how my body did it. How does it get me around? What is the support system that I don't ever give a holiday or, you know, well, sometimes I take it on vacation. Sometimes I take it out to eat, actually. Give it a good dinner. But anyway, that, and you know, unacknowledged thing that we have to support the me that you think you are. Does that, and if I think of that as a dance, if I think of the minutiae of that small dance being just the tiniest little, yeah. We know it. So, if it's a dance to me, but it's just that it's incredibly micro dance, I think that's arguably still dance. Doesn't have to be a certain scale.
Jellyfish.
Jellyfish.
They don't have bones, but they never non-stop dance underwater. And they're totally constant.
Can something that's not human dance? Can we use the word?
No bones.
Let's have that argument.
Like the spider.
I mean, they talk about light dancing on water. Is it, in fact, is that the right word for what light does on water? I think that's a fight we could have. Trees dancing in the wind? Oh, really? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you, that was nice.